Well, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, along with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, have placed a large and rather interesting order. They've ordered 450 million rounds of ammunition to be created and delivered to them over the next 5 years. Now, the company Alliant Tech Systems, or ATK, was awarded the contract to manufacture 40 caliber ammunition high-performance bullets. Apparently, these bullets, quote, provide optimum penetration for the terminal performance, referring to the way the tip of the bullet passes through barriers and expands, all the while holding its jacket in its toughest conditions. So this is interesting because this is not the Pentagon making this order for the military. It's DHS. And to give you a little perspective here, there are only about 311 million people living in the United States, so it begs the question, why such a massive order? Well, here to answer that and more is radio host and filmmaker Jason Burmis. Jason is also the director of Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. All right, Jason, let's cut to the chase here. Why does the DHS need 450 million hollow point bullets?
Well, that is the real question. And why does the Department of Homeland Security even exist in the first place? Let us not forget, this is a department that was created in the wake of 9/11, really in the spirit of Hitler's own Deutschland security. And over the past decade plus, they've been given more and more power. And alarmingly, the president has made some pretty crazy power grabs himself in the last few months. Of course, the NDAA and the subsequent bill where they can declare martial law under any emergency and have a kind of super eminent domain land grab. Well, if you're going to do this and you're going to have a department like Homeland Security enforce these types of things, unfortunately, you're going to have to arm them. And for them purchasing 450 million hollow point bullets, their intentions seem very clear to me. It's not only to intimidate the American people, but to use force when necessary if they rise.
Now, a lot of people are saying, of course, there are tons of discussions on this, especially going on online. And a lot of people are saying, hey, you know what, this is needed for training purposes. The Department of Homeland Security has a lot of, different departments under its umbrella, from Immigration and Customs Enforcement to TSA, and that's what they're saying. They're saying this needs to be used for practicing. So what about that argument?
Well, I think that argument is very thin indeed, especially when you're talking about hollow point bullets and not regular ammunition, when their clear-cut case is to, again, penetrate the target, okay? So if this were just for, shooting at a range or training purposes, number one, it wouldn't be this type of lethal ammunition. And number two, it wouldn't be 450 million rounds, literally around a round and a half for every man, woman, and child in the United States.
I'm wondering, Jason, do you think there's a larger discussion to be had here? Certainly, I've done a couple stories. I know this past November, Black Friday saw the most gun sales ever, and that's continuing. We are continuing to see very high gun sales in the U.S., and we've already seen the DHS also hiring armed security guards to protect federal buildings. There are some people who say, this is another sign that the U.S. government is preparing for some sort of mass civil unrest. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's been incrementally done again over the last decade plus, but really accelerated in the last few years through DHS, through fusion centers, through what we go through at the airport, them infringing on more and more of our rights. And now this has been almost become acceptable behavior by a totally illegitimate department. We should abolish the Department of Homeland Security and keep the protection of the homeland under the FBI, under state troopers, and under the U.S. military and the National Guard when necessary. That's what the National Guard is for.
Jason, though, you're certainly, there's a lot of people who do share your opinion that the Department of Homeland Security should not be in existence. But there are a whole lot more people who say, this is a department that was formed in response to 9/11. People say another 9/11 has not happened, so the Department of Homeland Security must be doing its job. How do you reconcile those arguments? How do you try to convince people that the DHS is useless?
Well, unfortunately, many of those terror plots that you're talking about that have been stopped by DHS and other departments were actually manufactured by those departments in the first place. And then when they want to say, you know, United States citizens might rise up and kill police officers, let's look at the Hutari militia. They've now gone through 2 separate trials where 2 separate judges have acquitted them in full, yet the fear-mongering still continues and the memos still continue that are targeting American citizens, libertarians, Ron Paul supporters, people who believe in God and beyond, literally targeting just about every single American citizen that lives here under one guise or the other.
I know there's also been some talk of a connection between DHS and a lot of the police forces in this country. I know that when we saw the Occupy Wall Street crackdown, some of those major crackdowns in New York City, there's been some talk that DHS agents were involved, that they've been involved in infiltrating Occupy movements around the country. Do you think this is legitimate? And if so, what's going on here?
I absolutely think it's legitimate, and I think it's gone beyond the Occupy movement. I thought we saw some of that stuff in some of the past G20s in Pittsburgh and other places. And I think you're going to still see the evolution of DHS unless we stop this monster. That's why we have people like Napolitano telling us that we're going to have DHS briefs at our local Walmart and our local stores at these telescreens to be worried about terrorism and spy on their neighbors. And that's why these memos are leaking again and again and again, because people who are not only in these departments but work with this department are leaking this to the public because they know it's out of control and wrong.
What about this most recent purchase that we started talking about with these 450 million rounds of ammunition, these kind of rare, very harsh kind of bullets? Have you seen anywhere a justification for this? Because I haven't. I haven't seen anything that sort of outlined exactly what this is going to be used for.
Absolutely not. When are we supposed to turn lethal force on American citizens? The answer is never. Not even in riots, even in countries like Greece that are in economic turmoil and have full-blown riots going on, it seems, every other month, where they're throwing Molotov cocktails at riot police. They're not using fatal intentions. They're not using lethal force. So why is it okay to bring it to this country? The answer is it is not okay to bring it to this country, and we should not be using lethal force against what really essentially are political dissidents.
All right, certainly an interesting discussion to be had. A lot of people still sort of unaware that this is going on, can't really wrap their head around the fact that these kinds of purchases are being made not by the U.S. military, I mean, that most people can understand, but by the Department of Homeland Security. Certainly interesting stuff. Jason Burmis, Director of Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined.